What is asylum? Asylum is a legal process that allows someone who feels their life is in danger to seek refuge in safer countries. Under U.S. and international law, someone who flees their home country and reaches the U.S. border with a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a political social group may apply for asylum. Once a migrant applies for asylum, they begin an often long process to prove that they cannot safely return to their country of origin. A brief history of asylum in the U.S. U.S. and international asylum laws are a reaction to the Holocaust, when a lack of asylum laws led to countries turning away people fleeing Nazis, often to their tragic deaths. In the decades prior to World War II, a nativist movement had gained power in the U.S., resulting in a deeply racist and exclusionary Immigration Act of 1924, which lowered per-country immigration quotas and barred almost all immigrants from Asia and Africa. Pointing to these exclusionary quotas, the U.S. turned back the MS St. Louis in 1939, telling more than 900 Jewish refugees from Nazi Germany to wait their turns. The decision was a death sentence for over half the passengers. Following the war in 1951, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees was formed. Signed by over 140 countries, the UNHCR was the first international body designed to help resettle refugees around the world. However, the U.S. did not sign until 1967. Then in 1980, bipartisan legislation was signed into law by President Jimmy Carter, mandating a legal asylum process in the U.S. The asylum process outlined by this law was followed for the next several decades through many different administrations, until the Trump administration made radical changes that repeatedly tried, and has arguably succeeded, in gutting the program. The U.S. asylum process. Once a migrant fleeing persecution reaches the U.S., they can apply for asylum and begin the sometimes years-long process. In a normal situation, the asylum process generally began with an applicant filling out a detailed and lengthy application and submitting it with their photo and fingerprints. If the asylum seeker entered the U.S. with a valid visa, they had an interview with an asylum officer from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, where they provided evidence to show that they have been or will be persecuted if they return to their country of origin. The asylum seeker is either granted asylum or denied. If denied, the asylum seeker can appeal the decision through immigration court. If a migrant seeks asylum after entering the U.S. without prior documentation, they are detained and they file the asylum application. They then undergo an initial credible fear interview to show that they have a legitimate fear of returning to their country of origin. If they are deemed to have a credible fear of returning, the asylum seeker either remains detained or is paroled to wait for their hearing in immigration court, which will either grant or deny them asylum. Asylum seekers are not entitled to legal representation, so those who are unable to find or afford an attorney must navigate the long and confusing process on their own. In fiscal year 2017, 20% of asylum seekers did not have representation, even though those with representation were 5 times more likely to win their asylum cases. Under Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, obtaining an attorney is even harder. Less than 2% of asylum seekers under the program have had legal representation. The Trump administration's assault on the asylum system. The Trump administration has repeatedly announced changes that have made the asylum process longer, crueler, and more confusing. Multiple Trump administration officials have basically said that they don't think the asylum system should exist at all. It has been a long-time Trump administration goal to eliminate the asylum system altogether. Under the Trump administration, denial rates for asylum seekers have steadily increased each year. In fiscal year 2017, 60% were denied. In fiscal year 2018, 65% were denied. In fiscal year 2019, 69% were denied. The Trump administration implemented a variety of different changes in an effort to block migrants from making asylum claims. The administration, starting around 2018, began turning away some asylum seekers at the border without allowing them to claim asylum, a violation of U.S. obligations under domestic and international law. In April 2018, the administration officially implemented a process of metering, intentionally slowing the process of asylum seekers at the border, turning their wait times into weeks or months, and putting many asylum seekers in dangerous limbo. The administration implemented an expedited deportation process. In March 2018, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions eliminated a requirement that asylum seekers get a full hearing before an immigration judge. In November 2019, the administration proposed raising a $50 fee for asylum applications, an absurd concept for asylum seekers who are fleeing to the U.S. to seek safety. The administration tried to categorically deny asylum to migrants fleeing domestic violence and gang warfare. Fortunately, the courts blocked this effort, saying their effort was, quote, arbitrary and capricious and contrary to the law. Even before the coronavirus pandemic, the Trump administration made 2 changes to asylum policy: the zero-tolerance family separation policy and the Remain in Mexico policy, which stand out for their shocking cruelty and devastating effects on our asylum system. Family separation and the zero-tolerance policy. In April 2018, the administration announced their zero-tolerance policy, which resulted in the separation of thousands of children from their families. The administration continually has obscured the total number of separated children and failed to keep adequate track of the children they have separated. The most recent count of separated children is more than 5,400. Shockingly, the DHS Inspector General report revealed that the administration had initially expected to separate as many as 26,000 children from their parents. The Trump administration completely failed at reuniting families, even after the 2018 court order to do so. At least one botched reunification resulted in children being held for 2 nights in a van last July in Texas before being reunited with their families. More reporting has revealed that the administration's family separation policy was made worse by its willful ignorance of the long-term harm suffered by families and children. In September 2019, the Office of Inspector General reported that thousands of family separations had created anxiety, fear, and PTSD in the children. The report said, quote, "Children expressed feelings of fear and guilt and became concerned for their parents' welfare, and children who believed their parents had abandoned them were angry and confused." Advocates have called family separation a truly evil policy and called for officials involved to be fired. Remain in Mexico, also known as the Migrant Protection Protocol policy. At the end of 2018, the administration announced the new migrant protection protocols that force migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. to wait in dangerous and unsanitary camps in Mexico during their months-long asylum process. By the beginning of 2020, the administration had forced more than 60,000 asylum seekers from the U.S. to wait in MPP camps. Only a dozen asylum claims were granted under MPP by October 2019, according to one estimate. Astonishingly, even the rare few who had been granted asylum have often been not able to obtain relief, because in several reported cases, they were sent back to Mexico anyway. In other cases, migrants have been sent back to Mexico after Customs and Border Protection agents falsified documents. Tens of thousands of asylum seekers, many of whom were families with children, sent back under MPP have faced horrific conditions during their months-long wait. A report from Human Rights First found that, quote, over 340 public reports of rape, kidnapping, torture, and other violent acts against asylum seekers returned to Mexico under MPP. Vice News published a story about an asylum seeker who feared being returned to Mexico under MPP, but was sent back anyway. He and his young child were kidnapped by a cartel just 5 hours later. In a 600-person study, almost 9 out of 10 respondents expressed fear about being returned to Mexico. The study found that 63.9% of asylum seekers under MPP said that their persecutors could find them and had access to them in Mexico, but were returned to Mexico anyway. 23% have been threatened with physical violence, and over half of those threats turned into actual experiences of physical violence. There is also little in the way of shelter, food, or sanitary conditions under MPP. 34.5% of immigrants under MPP have experienced homelessness. Finding clean water for drinking and bathing has also been a challenge. Many migrants have turned to the dangerous and polluted Rio Grande River as a last resort, but there have been reports of adults and children developing rashes after bathing in the river. The same river has also led to many tragic deaths. The situation remains so terrible that U.S. asylum officers have filed suit against the policy, saying that MPP is, quote, fundamentally contrary to the moral fabric of our nation. Asylum and the coronavirus. Recently, the Trump administration completed its longtime goal for the U.S. asylum program by using the coronavirus pandemic as a pretext to shut down asylum completely. Immigration courts are now closed. The U.S.-Mexico border is closed except for essential traffic, and Trump recently announced the suspension of immigration. Trump announced these changes even though immigrants and asylum seekers have nothing to do with coronavirus. These policy changes are part of Trump's ongoing re-election effort to conflate immigrants and disease, in an attempt to distract American voters from noticing his failures to properly respond to COVID-19. These moves endanger asylum seekers, especially the ones stuck in Mexico, who live in crowded camps with few healthcare resources. Healthcare workers have said that an outbreak of coronavirus in the Remain in Mexico camps is inevitable. Human Rights Watch has said that these asylum seekers should be paroled into the U.S., where they can undergo proper health screenings and quarantine. Quote, even in times of emergency, governments remain obliged to protect refugees from return to a threat of persecution, exposure to inhumane and degrading conditions, or threats to life and physical security. Unfortunately, it seems very likely that the Trump administration will continue using the coronavirus threat to keep asylum seekers on the other side of the border for the duration of the pandemic, or the remainder of Trump's presidency. For the last half-century, our asylum laws have helped America remain a beacon for refugees and people in need from all over the world. However, the Trump administration has worked tirelessly to close all the options for obtaining asylum in the U.S., leaving refugees mired in a process marked by cruelty and chaos. In the last few months, the global crisis has led many countries to shut down borders and turn inwards. We cannot and should not, however, accept unnecessary changes to a necessary asylum process that provides safe haven and refuge for some of the people who need it most. Want to go deeper and learn more? Check out our website, americasvoice.org. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment to see the next video in the series, and so that others can find this video as well.